Welcome back to the Freelance Experience. I'm Erica, and today we're tackling a topic that makes a lot of freelancers uncomfortable: pricing. So, how much should you be charging? How do you make sure you're not being underpaid or you're basically being screwed? Pricing your work is more about than just numbers. It's really about valuing yourself as a professional. And in this episode, we're going to break it down: how to confidently set your rates, negotiate with editors, and ensure that you're earning what you deserve. So let's get started. First off, pricing, it's not just about money, it's about positioning. The rates you charge send a message about how you see yourself and how others should see you too. If you're undercharging, you might land work, but you'll also quickly burn out and then you can't keep it up. Otherwise, if you charge premium rates, you'll attract better clients and have time to deliver quality work. The goal is to find the balance that works for your skills, experience, and lifestyle. So, first of all, let me start and say that when we're talking about freelance writing for magazines and newspapers, you don't always get to set your rates, especially when you're first getting started. A lot of places have sort of standard freelance writing rates. When it comes to magazines and newspapers, those really are not high enough to be able to make a living just doing those kinds of pieces. And so you're not going to get paid really what your time and talent is worth when you're writing for just magazines and newspapers. Unfortunately, that is pretty much just the way the world is when it comes to writing in this way. Almost nobody is able to write just for those things and actually make a lot of money, which is why I'm always talking about the other side of it, which is the freelance content writing and services. And that's where we're really going to focus today in terms of pricing. Now, first thing you need to know when it comes to pricing your freelance writing, content writing, copywriting, freelance services is you have to understand the market. Depending on the market that you're in, the industry that you're in, it can be different. And rates vary depending on the type of writing, the publication, the organization, the kind of service, or even your niche. And there are ways to figure this out. So you want to check out, there are resources on the internet that you can Google, just sort of like, standard industry rates for particular industries, niches, organizations. So just do a little Googling and you'll come up with some numbers. But the best way, I think, to find out this information is joining freelance writing groups and forums online where people are talking about this kind of stuff. I promise you, freelancers are always curious about other people's rates, how to price better, how to deal with, not getting paid or dealing with a difficult client, XYZ. That's part of that whole networking and then finding your writer community. That is going to be so helpful when it comes to pricing. Even now, having been doing this for so many years, I still come up with situations where I'm like, well, gosh, I don't know what I should charge for this. What is this worth? And what if that? What if that? And it's so helpful to have other voices chime in and give you the wisdom from their experience. In asking for their insight, they love to share it. And a lot of times it's stuff that you never would have thought of. So the market, you need to sort of know the market, like what's a normal rate for someone to get paid for this service or in this industry. But it's really your skills, your experience, and the value that you bring to the job that's going to dictate whether you charge above or below that. So, for example, for me, I do not ever take jobs where I get paid by the hour for the most part. There's been times where I've changed that, but that is because I don't consider myself, when I'm doing a writing job, I don't consider myself like I shouldn't be paid by the hour, because the hours that go into my work are the years of experience I have and the value I'm going to bring to the job that I'm doing. Um, I can do a job faster than someone that maybe is on an earlier level than me. But it's not really fair for them to get paid more, if you see what I'm saying. So, generally speaking, when I do a freelance writing gig, I'm pretty much only doing like a project price. So, I'll look at the scope of the project, whether it's a one-time project or it's like a recurring gig, and I will write up a proposal and I will set a price, like either a project price or a monthly ongoing price that I'm going to be paid. This is how I'm able to actually make good money. Because a little secret is that when people see things written as a project price or a monthly price, it looks like a lot less than it would if you were doing that by the hour. A great way to figure out a price is how much do you want to be paid by the hour, or how much is your hourly rate? So say your hourly rate is $50 an hour. You can sort of calculate how long would this project, or how long will this monthly task or whatever take you. Multiply your hourly rate that you want by those hours. So say it was going to take you 4 hours a month and your baseline is $50 an hour. So that would be $400, or sorry, that would actually only be $200. Well, that's really not much probably for the work that you're going to do. So then I would double that. So that is one way to figure out price if you want like a simple formula. But really, I sort of think of it in chunks. Like I, at this point, say I'm not doing anything for less than $1,000 a month or $1,000 per project. And that's kind of where I start, because you have to also be thinking about the fact that you are running a business as a freelancer. You are going to have taxes taken out of this money. You are going to be paying business expenses with this money. And at the end of the day, $200 is really not $200. And you have to account for everything else that goes in to what you're doing and what comes out of that money, if that makes sense. Okay, so next up, you can calculate a baseline rate. So once you have this sense of the market, you can sort of figure out where you want to be. That can be done by what I just told you, that sort of like, I want to be paid $50 an hour. And so I'm going to calculate how many hours I'm working and multiply that and then double it. Or you can just you can look at it more big picture. So you can, number one, you can determine how much you want to earn annually. You can start big, like say you want to earn $100,000 annually. Consider what that is in taxes and sort of other business expenses, etc. Then divide that number by the billable hours or projects that you plan to take on. Obviously, you don't need to do this for the entire year, but you can do it by the month. And you can say, okay, this is how much money I want to make. This is how many hours I want to work. And in order to reach this number, I want at this many hours, I have to be making this much money. That can kind of tell you, and I'll put this in the show notes because that's kind of confusing. But that can kind of show you, okay, this is about what I need to be charging. Now, obviously, you can't just do that without thought. Every single project that you take on is going to have its own unique sort of contours and things that you need to take into account, but at least it gives you a better understanding of where you might want to be based on how much you want to work and how much you want to make. So an example would be, if you want to make $60,000 a year and you plan to work 20 hours a week, you would need to charge at least $60 to $75 an hour to do that. So that ensures that your business is profitable and sustainable. So when you look at a big picture like that, it can be really helpful for sort of grounding you and giving you a foundation of what you should charge. Because when you're coming at it without any sort of framework, it can be really overwhelming. Like I mentioned before, I don't charge by the hour. And that's because I charge based on value and not on time. And for me, this has been a game changer. I didn't even know you could do this when I started. So I don't charge based on how long it takes me to do anything, to write something. I charge based on the value. So for example, if I were doing like 1,000-word blog post, or I was supposed to do like, say, well, let's do like, if I were doing like an 800-word blog post for a business every month, and that could pay. So for example, if I was doing, say, 4 blog posts a month for an organization, if they wanted to pay me by the hour, I mean, I don't know how many hours that would take me, but I guarantee you that it would not pay me enough for the value that I was bringing. So I would probably work out a deal where I said, okay, I'm going to do 4 blog posts a month. I'm going to do 4 600-word blog posts a month, including, sort of like I'm coming up with an image to go with the blog post and then sharing on social media, for example. And for those things, I will charge, I'm pulling this out of thin air, but say $1,000 a month. Okay. If I were doing that by the hour, there's no way that I could make $1,000 on it, because I'm a fast writer and it's not something that's going to take me that much time. But that's because of the value and the expertise that I bring to the project. Now, there are situations in which you might take a lower price or you might even accept hourly work, but there has to be a bigger value for that. So, if you got the opportunity, say, to write some kind of article for a major publication or something that was really valuable in your industry, your niche, and they could only pay you a small amount, you have to think, what is the bigger value here? If you get your byline or your words and name into this place, is that going to lead to other opportunities? Then hey, it may be worth it. Every situation, every opportunity like deserves its own sort of moment for you to negotiate what matters and what doesn't. But but please remember to charge based on value, not on time. And also the other thing I've got to say about this when you're working with the client is sometimes the client doesn't understand all the things that go into what you do. And so occasionally you have to educate them about what goes into the work that you're doing. They may not realize something that you're doing. And so that's why it's important in a proposal or a conversation that you're saying, well, this is what it takes to produce da 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 da. Then they may start to understand and be more open to, paying you a little more. So the key is to communicate the value of what you're going to bring to the table. You highlight your expertise, what you bring, your reliability, and your results will be the proof that they need. Step 4, when it comes to pricing, is learning to negotiate. Negotiation, that's a skill that we all have to have, whether we like it or not, as freelancers. One way to do this effectively is to always sort of upcharge. So you can assume maybe that everyone is not going to go for the first price. And if you assume that they're going to go down, you want to make sure that you start higher than the price that you actually want. So if I want to make $2,000 from this client, I need to tell them that my fee is 2,500 or 3,000, so that if they're like, oh, could you do a little lower, I'm able to negotiate with them because I started higher. But you have to keep your absolute minimum rate at the front of mind when you're thinking about this, knowing that you don't want to go any wiggle room from there, which is why you have to price a little bit higher. So you want to lead with that higher number and be prepared to explain why your work is worth it. If they do offer less, consider negotiating other things. Like, okay, if we're going to do that, then, I'm going to take this, some other thing that was included in your previous or in your original contract or your original proposal, like get some of that work off your plate if they're not going to pay you what you need, because you don't want to start running an unsustainable business. So just be thinking flexible, open to conversation, but also confident, and be ready to educate them on what it is, like the value that you bring and why it's important. Okay. Negotiation, not just about money. It's about ensuring that the work aligns with your goals and values and what you need. And it's really important. This is probably the hardest part, not to have a scarcity mindset, not to think, oh my gosh, if I don't get this, if I don't land this, this is it. I'm never going to have anything again. I think when you're first starting out, you can accept lower paying stuff because you're just trying to get your foot in the door and get started. But eventually you have to get to a point where you are willing to walk away when you can't get what you want. Now, there are a lot of intricacies that would go into making a decision like that. Again, that's something that we can really get into in Bragworthy Bylines if you want to learn more about it. But just know that there's an evolution in this pricing world as a freelancer. Now, step 5 would be to build confidence. I just kind of mentioned that a little bit, but let's dive in a little further. A lot of people, a lot of freelance writers, they struggle to charge what they're worth because they're worried about being too expensive. And I totally get that. I still get that sometimes. But the truth is that good people to work with expect to pay for quality work, and they know that that costs money. If you are trying to work with someone that is really trying to underpay you, you can probably expect that they're probably not going to be they're going to be a very unfun person to work for. It's interesting because a lot of times you'll find that the easiest people to work for are the ones that pay the best because they're very hands off. the hardest, micromanaging, picky, yada, yada people to work for are the ones that want to pay you the least. And honestly, at the end of the day, if those people are not worth your time because they like ruin your sanity. So be thinking about all these things. Like make sure people can pass the vibe check. In other words, charging more actually leads to more respect and to better assignments. So if you look at a guy charging 200 for a specific service, and then there's a guy over here charging 1,500 for the same service, and you're the business that's going, well, we want this to be good. You're not going to go for the $200 guy because you're like, what's wrong with him? Why is he charging $200? You're going to go with the person that projects confidence in their pricing, because you want the best. And so there's definitely an art to this. It takes some time to get used to. You don't want to go for the what's the word? Shoot for the moon on, your first go around. We have to start with a little bit of lower pricing in the beginning, but ultimately you're going to get to that place where you can charge more, where you should charge more. And people are going to respect that about you. The more confident you are, the more others will believe in your value. So to recap, to price your work and get paid what you're worth, you need to understand the market rates, calculate your baseline rate, what you want to be paid, charge based on your value, not your time. That's my favorite one. You got to be open and learn to negotiate, and then build confidence. Pricing, it does not have to be overwhelming, but approaching it with clarity and confidence, you can attract clients who value you and your work. Talking this out with other freelancers and getting their advice, always recommended. In the next episode, we're going to talk about something that's just as crucial, and that's how to turn one-off assignments into ongoing relationships with editors. Key, guys. This is the secret to building a sustainable freelance business and long-term relationships that pay off. As always, if you're finding this podcast helpful, please share it somewhere. And don't forget to stay tuned for the final episode coming up soon, where we're going to talk about brag-worthy bylines and how it can help you take your freelance career to the next level. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.